My name is Ollie, and this is my final project for C++, which is an improved upon version of the homeowner expense calculator from our midterm project. So the difference with this one is that instead of putting a range of months, it allows you to track expenses for individual months across the year, and it also allows you to save and load that data from a file. It also includes, sorry, it also includes an option for you to be able to analyze the data or sort the months or identify the highest expense months. And I wanted to make sure that I fixed my input validation from last time as well. So now that long-winded spiel is over, let's get into it. So I started with my include statements, so I can have access to the things that I need in my code. So input and output with cin and cout. So yeah, just different include statements so that I can access the library of these things, as you can see in my comments. Alright. Next, as you can see, I created a constant called file name, and this is where I'll be storing, or this is where I chose to store the file name in one constant, so that if I need to change the name, then I only have to change it one time. So that just makes it easier for editing. Next, I name my structure, which is month expense or monthly expense, and all the data will be stored, or all of this data belongs together as the record for 1 month. So each month has a number and expenses, budget amounts, and all that jazz. So this just makes it cleaner than making a completely separate array for each category. After my structure, I list my prototypes so that the compiler knows what to expect and just knows that they exist before their definitions after the main function. So I'll be going over these later, but you can see we have a lot of different functions here. So the function to display the menu, get the int range, in range, make sure we have a non-negative double, and so on and so forth. We'll get into the meat of these. After my prototypes, I go into the main function, and I create a vector here called records. And this is going to store all the monthly expense records that the user enters or loads. So I chose a vector in this case because it has the ability to grow dynamically, so the user can enter however many months they need to. And then I declare choice to be an integer. And this is what they'll use to choose what part of the menu they are selecting. And that'll correspond to what functions need to be run, or what the program will do in the case of their choice. And then this fixed and set precision cout is going to format the values that they put, well, the money, to 2 decimal places, because that's how money is displayed. Just so it'll just look like normal currency instead of a random number. Okay, next we print the title and a little line here just for visual aesthetic. And then we do a do while loop for the menu. So with the menu, want it to display at least once. That's why we chose do while. Oh, excuse me. And then it'll continue repeating until the user chooses to exit, which will be choice 8. So inside here, as I said, we'll display the menu to show the options, and then we want to then we call get in range, and that's going to get the user's menu choice. And the choice will be, again, between 1 through 8. And we want to make sure it's within that range. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure it was in range, so I'm using this validation function instead of just cin, because it protects the program from bad input, like a number outside of the range or a character outside of the range, like a letter or something. So they can choose between add or update a month, save to file, load from file, display the year summary, find highest expense month, sort, display monthly report, or exit. And that's the end of our main function. So after that, we want to define our functions. So the program already knows how to behave or what to enact in specific cases, but now we have to define the functions of those specific cases. So the first function that I choose to define is the display menu, and this prints the available menu options. And it doesn't need any parameters, so as you can see, that's empty. And it doesn't need to return anything because it's just here to display something to the console. Our next function is get int in range. This is a pretty crucial function. It handles integer input, validation, and here we're going to take some parameters. We have prompt, minimum value, and maximum value. And where is our prompt? Okay, well, so inside the function, we first declare value to be an integer, and then we go into a while loop. So while true, it will perform these. So it'll continue until the user enters valid input. So it prints the prompt, which asks them to enter a number 1 through 8. And then they input their choice, and what they input goes into value. Then I check cin fail. So if the user types something that is invalid, then it outputs an error. And if we don't fix it, then it's going to continue to fail. So if cin fail is true, then we want to clear it to reset the error state. So we'll clear it, and then if it's valid, then it'll clear the rest of the line with ignore, and then just return the valid value. And that will exit the loop and then send it back to the function as it is meant to. Then we go on to our next function, which is get non-negative double. This is similar to the one that we just went over, but this is going to be used for dollar amounts so that it's non-negative. This is also going to use a while loop, so the user is prompted over until they enter a valid value. So it checks for an input that's within the range, which in this case is a non-negative. So over 0, and if necessary, then it clears the error state and rejects the negative number. And if it's within the range, then it ignores it, returns the value, and so on, like the previous one. Next function is the get month name, and this is going to convert the number of the month into the string or the actual name of the month. So it's an array of 12, starting with January and then ending in December. So since there are 12 months, and as we know, arrays start at 0, I did the return as the month minus 1, so it's within that range. So if the month is 1, then it returns index 0, which is January, and so on and so forth. Next is the find month index function, and this function is used to search through the vector to see whether the month already exists. So it takes the vector by constant reference here, and in this case I chose constant because the function only needs to look at the data and it doesn't need to change it. So passing it by reference avoids making a copy that we don't need of the vector. And the function then loops through each record. As we can see, it goes from 0 to the record size and matches the month being searched for it and returns that index. So if the loop finishes and it doesn't find a match, then the function returns -1. And -1 because it's not a valid index or vector index, so it just tells it that the month wasn't found. And that'll prevent duplicate records. Next, we have get month data to collect all of the expense and budget information for 1 month. So first, as you can see, the month expense variable is created, or is month expense. The month expense variable is named record, and this is going to temporarily store the user's input. Next, the month number is collected using get int and range, so that we know the month is between 1 and 12. Then it's going to print each month. Then it'll print each month name by calling get month name, and the parameter is record.month. And then after that, each expense and budget value is collected. So housing, the money actually spent versus budget, insurance, utilities, maintenance, renovations, groceries, and our eating out expense versus budget. Next is the calculate total expense function, and this calls the parameter for this is going to be the expenses, and it'll add all of the actual expense categories for 1 month. So it adds up the record for all of those categories. And it's taking all of these by reference because it only needs to read the values and it doesn't need to change them. As you can see, it'll return the sum of all of those. Next, we have calculate total budget, and it works the same way, but with the budget. Next is the add or update month option, and this controls whether the program adds a new month or updates an existing one. So if they made an error to one or something, they can choose the same month or a different month if they're just adding. And this also takes the vector by reference, because it may need to change something. So it calls get month data to collect a new record from the user, and find month index to check to see if it already exists, and if it does, then it updates it. And if the index is -1, then the month wasn't found, so it'll add it instead of update it. And then we have the save to file option, which saves all the monthly records to an external text file. And this takes the vector by constant reference because it only needs to read it and it doesn't need to change it. So we create the OF stream using the file name constant that we declared earlier. And this is going to be used to write output to a file. So I check whether the file opened successfully, and if it didn't open, then the function prints out an error message. And then we go into a for loop, which writes each record to the file 1 month per line. And each value is separated by a space here, just for simple formatting, because it's easier to write and easier to read back in the same order. So after writing the records, the file is then closed, and it prints a confirmation message to let the user know that it was successfully saved. Next, we have the load from file option, which loads what we saved from the text file. It uses ifstream to read the input from the file instead of writing it. So it first checks if the file opened, and if it doesn't, then it prints out an error message telling the user if it doesn't exist, or it tells the user to enter and save the data first. Next we clear the records, so the loaded file becomes the current set of records instead of being added on top of whatever was already in memory. And I made a temporary variable, so the while loop reads values into the temp in the same order that they were saved. And inside the loop here, inside of our while loop here, I check the month number in between 1 and 12 before adding it to the vector, just for extra validation. So then each record that is valid is added with this here. And then we close our file and print out how many records were loaded. Next, we have the display month report function, and this displays, or this lets the user choose a month and then displays that month's details. So it first checks if the vector is empty. If there aren't any records, then it prints a message and returns. Then it asks the user for a month number using the get and range function that we defined already. And then it calls find month index to locate the month. And if it returns -1, the program tells that no data was found. Otherwise, it sends it to display 1 month details, which we will get into. Display 1 month function prints the detailed report for 1 month. So first it calculates the total expenses and total budget by calling the calculation functions. And then I use the helper functions instead of recalculating the totals here because it avoids repeated code. So it prints a formatted table with columns for category, actual amount, budget, and difference. And I use left, right, and set width to align it into a neat table. So for each category, the function prints the actual amount, the budget amount, and the difference. So the difference is calculated, as we know, by the actual amount minus the budget. So if it's a positive amount, then the category went over the budget. So after printing all of these categories, it prints the total. And then we call display over budget categories, and it lists all of the categories that exceeded the budget, and it compares the total expenses and total budget. If the expenses are more than, it displays the amount over budget, otherwise the amount saved. Then for the year summary, we do an overview of all of the months currently stored. Display yearly summary. Um, 1 month. And then the over budget categories, we did that already. The year summary. This gives an overview of all the months currently stored. Next, we have to find the highest expense. Sort month by expenses. Okay. Now, let's run our program. So you can see we have our menu options. So let's start at the beginning of the month. Housing payment, we did $1,200. I'll say we put in a negative amount. See, that doesn't work. So go 1,200, 150. Alright, let's do another month. Month 2. We'll do similar. Excuse me. And we'll do one more. Say month 14. Doesn't exist. Let's put the actual month 3. Didn't mean to do that, but okay. 20. 50. And then we'll do sort the months in ascending order. Detailed report. I'll do the second month. Alright, let's see what it gave us. So, this. Okay, we're here. So, we did our entries for the month of January. Then we did February. And then we did March. Next, we saved the data with option 2 to homeowner expenses text. And then we loaded the expenses. Next, we show our yearly summary. So you can see it's formatted January, February, and March with the differences, the budget and the expenses, and our overall status or total was under budget. Next, we find the month with the highest expenses, which was February, with the expense of almost $4,000. And then we sort it from lowest to highest. So February, January, then March, then the opposite. So March, January, then February. And our detailed report for 1 month, which we chose February. Here's our report, our actual budget and the difference, and then our total. The categories over budget were utilities, maintenance, renovations, groceries, and eating out. This is how much we were over budget. Then next, we exit. I think that about covers it. Thank you so much. Have a good night.